Great. We're recording. Mavis, thank you so much for being willing to have a conversation with us that we can share with our rewilding community.
You are welcome. It's good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. So I'll share a little bit about the community since I haven't really shared that with you, and you even agreed to speak with us without that, so that says a lot.
Yeah.
But the rewilding community sort of organically came into fruition. Angus and I ran an online program back in the spring that was called the Rewilding Experience. And the premise was that we're using rewilding, that's a metaphor used for nature conservancy, where nature can be
Ah,
rewilded back to its natural state. And one of the most famous examples is the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone Park, that really transformed the natural environment.
mhm.
But we're using that metaphor as a way to point to how we can be rewilded back to our natural state of love. Like that is our natural state. And we can look in that direction and allow ourselves to be rewilded in the feeling of that. So that's where the metaphor comes from.
Ah, thanks for telling me that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's a great metaphor.
Thank you. And so the community formed after we did that program. There were people that wanted to continue to stay in the conversation. And so what we're doing is Angus and I are continuing to provide ongoing webinars and ongoing guest speaker interviews. And there's a community group where there's this ongoing discussion. So it's just become a
Mhm.
really beautiful, loving, heartfelt community that, is just really, really
Uh,
strong in our hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I personally, and I think we all were so impacted by one of the statements that you made when we last spoke to you about it seemed like the nature of your work or the way that you put it succinctly was that it was about letting go of everything that doesn't feel like love. That's what you were pointing your clients towards. And I feel like that's really the essence of what we want to do with our program is really point everyone back to that love, the impersonal loving place that, really is what the metaphor is pointing to, is that is our essential nature.
that's
and and so you just put it so beautifully. It really impacted me powerfully, and I think everybody was affected by that feeling on that day.
Hmm.
So we wanted to get more of the same.
No pressure,
No
right?
pressure.
uh,
Yeah. And so, in terms of your work, I believe you've been sharing this. I don't, and I know you don't even call it a specific thing that you share. You refer to yourself as a pointer. So you've been pointing people for over 40 years. Is that accurate in terms of
yeah.
helping them to wake up more to who they are? And that you learned directly from Sydney Banks, who was one of the he was the person who started the principles understanding or started sharing what he was seeing
Mhm.
that led people to share it in their own ways, just like we're doing, Angus and I are doing in our own way, sharing what we see. And one of the things that you said in our last conversation was how we are nature, we are that intelligence, there's no separation there. And so, for me, I'd love that to be a jumping off point if you're open to just sharing more about what you see around that we are made up of that.
Sure. Boy, it sounds like you guys are doing some awesome work. What a good time to put some love into the world.
Mm.
There
Yeah,
seems to be a little scarcity of it, but we can do something about that.
that's right.
Um, I always thought it was, maybe not always, but pretty much of my time on the planet, I always thought it was kind of odd when people uh, say they wanted to go out in nature, like it was out there. It's not in your house. It's not in a building. It's whatever. But in order to be in nature, you had to go outside. Don't you think that's peculiar?
I hadn't
It's
thought
like
about it that
I,
way.
I hadn't.
like
No.
what are we? It's like we're not made of plastic. Although sometimes I think if we don't quit using it, we might be made of plastic. But
Right.
but the point is, um, we are made of the same intelligent energy that everything is made of. just different amounts for different creatures, different kinds, different mixtures for different creatures. But we are divinely engineered by nature, and there are no mistakes in nature. Ergo, we are not a mistake.
Mm.
We are not, there's not something wrong with us. That, although, have you ever met anybody that couldn't prove that there wasn't something wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
You
They
know,
got
they can
evidence.
use the logic of their, personal intellect,
Mhm.
and they can say, well, yeah, but how about this? And how about this? And I did that. And they can prove that they're just kind of a mess. And however old they are, they have to spend the rest of their lives trying to make themselves into a good human being, having no idea that nature took care of that, that's done. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. You are just like everyone else, and you uniquely you at the same time. So our job, isn't to try to improve on nature. Our job is to see that nature made us exactly the way we're supposed to be. Our job is to realize that, just to see that, and to see that there isn't any other way that it could be, that we just make up other reasons for it, but there really isn't any other way that it could be, because there are no mistakes in nature. Although we think there is. Well, how come that tree is bent that way instead of that way? Or how come this and how come that? But nice try, but we're exactly who we're supposed to be. And what a relief that is.
Mhm.
Then, then all that's left is for us to catch ourselves when we forget that. And the way we catch ourselves is we notice how we feel. You, before you started recording, we were talking a bit about the feeling.
Mhm.
And I don't think there's a human being that isn't always trying to find a nice feeling. And we've gotten really kind of peculiar about the ways we go about that. Like we um, use drugs,
Mhm.
alcohol. We think we need a lot of things. We buy a lot of things, or we eat too much, or we do this too much, or we sometimes we try to find a nice feeling by making other people feel bad, by trying to make other people feel insignificant, or trying to pump ourselves up and think, well, we're better than other people, or we're whatever. Our skin is a better color, our eyes are a better color, we're taller, so we're smarter. It's like we have all these. I didn't used to think these were peculiar ideas. I just, from where I sit now, I go, whoa, how did we come up with that? It's it's like, I don't have any lawn in my yard. I just tore it all up and put plants in, because I don't like lawnmowers and I don't like mowing anyway. But so I've got, and my garden has no organization whatsoever. It's just, I find plants and I put them in there, and it's okay. You guys, you're on your own. You have a home, but take care of yourself. And wouldn't it be odd if those flowers had egos? Those plants had egos. Like, look at that daisy. It's just, I can't stand up straight. Heavy. The wind blows it over. It's like it's just us that have egos, and the ego is just a belief about what has to happen so we can feel important. What has to happen out there so we can feel important. Not knowing, innocently, really, not knowing that we're already important. That nature took care of that too. So we can let go of all that. We can say, oh, that's done. I don't have to do that. I don't have to do something to myself or change myself so that I can feel important. It's taken care of. I probably wandered off away from your question, didn't
No, that's beautiful.
Not at all. I find that you know, and I guess I've always been a bit of a nature buff. That I'll be the first to sort of switch on a nature documentary in our household. But then you know, as far as this understanding is concerned, I look to nature and I look at, you know, the natural world, and you look at the animals in the natural world, and they're just sort of thriving on instinct. They are evolving towards balance and harmony. They flourish on instinct, and yet the only difference between us and them per se is that we have this intellectual machinery, and for some reason we forget we have this natural instinct. We have this GPS system that's there for the rest of the natural world, and yes, and yet us little old human beings, we have this sort of like little intellect and an ego that kind of wants to take the wheel most of the time, it
it?
seems.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, so I totally, I love what you're saying. That just really speaks to me.
It's I remember. Do you remember when Mount St. Helens blew?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
a long time ago. And I was, watching the news about that, and there was this bunch of scientists talking about how long it was going to take for um, the mountain to recover, and they had all these perfectly logical explanations for that because it was just toxic ash and it killed everything, and they didn't know if it would ever recover, but if it was going to, it was going to be a really long time. Fast forward to a couple of years, and they had forgotten about gophers. That when it blew, the gophers were way under, right? And they kind of stayed there a while until things kind of cooled down, and then they kind of dug their way up. And as they dug their way up, they left little pieces of soil around, and some seeds. Birds flying over this would drop seeds on there, and pretty soon little green things started coming up, and that spread and spread and spread. And they thought the deer and the other animals that were kind of displaced by it would never go back. But guess who found all those little sprigs, and they just ate things that they didn't normally eat. But so what? So within, this is not going to be accurate, I know that, but within 8-10 years, it was green. Now, it wasn't tall tree green,
Mm-hmm.
but it was green. And rain would fall in leaves and dead logs and so forth, and bugs would find that. And it was just, nature took care of it. Nature healed itself. It fooled us all.
Mm.
We had all these reasons. Well, to put it bottom line, we didn't appreciate the power of nature to heal itself. We didn't appreciate that nature knows more than we do about it. It's like, for instance, climate change. It's just like, I was going to say, who doesn't know there's climate change, but that goes off that in that direction. But the point is, the climate's, or the planet's going to win. It may have to shed us because we're the problem, but and we won't be around to see how it healed itself again in new ways. That will happen. And I'm not worried about the planet surviving, but we may have to be shed in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's how nature just takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of nature, I'm just going to shut the door because there's a dog barking next door.
Angus has a lot of thinking about the dog next door that barks.
I could invite him in.
Maybe you can help me, Mavis.
Well, I would just want to see the dog. So,
Well, I don't know.
Sometimes you have trouble finding the love.
I do. It's a dog that I don't particularly want to see the best of times.
there's an exception to the rule.
Yes, there's always an exception.
We all have our growing edge, right? That's our
Yeah,
humanness. Yeah. But that power of nature to heal is
yeah,
so hopeful. And I think that we forget that we have that when we are nature, that is the direction to look in for our own well-being and peace of mind and healing on the psychological
yeah,
and emotional level, that intelligence is within and there for us.
yeah. We are what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And I know, I've heard, I don't know who first said that, um, but I didn't actually know how true it was until about 40 years ago. It's like, oh my God, why didn't somebody tell me that? I've been looking all over. I'm trying to get the outside to shape up so I can feel better. Trying to get all my kids to behave themselves and be happy at one time. It's not going to happen. But as soon as that happens, I'm going to feel better.
Mm.
As soon as I have enough money, I'll feel better. Whatever enough is. As soon as this, as soon as that. And I didn't know I was signing those kinds of contracts with myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like if that was put in contract form, I promise I am not going to have peace of mind or enjoy my life until I have enough money. Sign here. Just sign that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But without knowing it, we did.
Mm-hmm.
We made the contract up and we signed it, and we had no idea we were doing that.
Mm.
Delaying peace of mind until something on the outside changes in the form you think it needs to be changed. If there's anything that we have absolutely nothing to do about, it's what's outside us. Change is constant outside. There's always something going on, always something going on. And if we believe, which I did for a long time, that we have no rest until things turn out the way we want it to, we
Mm.
will have no rest.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And in the meantime, we're missing the fact that things are turning out quite well, actually,
Mm.
and better than our imaginations could cook up. It just doesn't look like it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, this is something that I feel like I have struggled with over the years, and so just as you said that, I even realized that even today, but I find myself thinking, oh, well, I'll just get through today, or I'll just get through this week, and then I will rest. And it's now really becoming very apparent to me that the sweet spot is in the now, in the moment, to really open my eyes
uh,
to the now. And I think about nature, it's kind of like, well, look how blessed nature is. It doesn't have this sort of intellectual machinery. It's constantly pushing ourselves into some utopian future. It's kind of like they're just enjoying the moment. And
yeah,
I'm just realizing that I really do attach myself to this idea. It's like, oh, well, I will rest at this point in the future once I get this all done. And I might be doing some brilliant things that are really enjoyable. There's a part of me is like, but I'll get this done and then I'll rest. And then I
yeah,
get to the rest point. I'm like, well, I'm really bored now. I want to be back doing the things that were fun. But it's so apparent to me that that's kind of been part of my programming, is this idea that that at some point in the future I'll rest or I'll
yeah.
relax.
But isn't it just the best news ever that that's just a passing thought?
Yeah.
It's not in your DNA. It's not who you are. It's just this ridiculous little thought that just keeps kind of going around and around and around. And the solution is to see that that's all it is, and you can feel it. There's a kind of um, for that particular thought, there's a kind of urgency. Yes, just
Mm.
mild.
Mm.
And hurry up and get this done so I can rest.
Mm-hmm.
But if you notice that feeling, you don't even need to know what you were thinking. The feeling is just saying the way you're thinking right now feels this way.
Mm.
If that isn't the handiest app ever, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, talk about talk about the love of nature. It, it it it's with us all the time. It's not like it's not like when we go to sleep, our guidance system quits.
Mhm.
It's like you feel a certain amount of discomfort when you're sleeping, and you turn over. You feel yourself getting upset about something, and if you know that you're creating it, you don't even need to know what you're getting upset about. It simply doesn't matter. The content in, is irrelevant. But the old psychology would say, we got to know what you're thinking, why you're thinking, and who taught you to
Mm.
think that way, and what are the results of that, and what are you going to do about it? And and since we can create an unending list of issues, can you imagine how long we're going to be at trying to figure out where the thought came from?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter,
Mm.
because the guidance system, our senses, are letting us know all the time whether we're living the moment from who we actually are, which is wisdom, common sense, or whether we're living in this moment from a habit that's not particularly useful to us. All you need to do to know that is how you feel.
Mhm.
It's a perfect feedback system, and it never stops. It's not like a really good self-help book that it only works when you're reading it. You know,
Right.
it's there all the time, and I didn't know that. And once I realized it, I I remember thinking, how could I have missed that? That is so simple. It's so logical. There are no holes in it. How could I not see that? Well, that's why I couldn't see it. It was so
Mm.
simple, so obvious, and there are no holes in it. Um, so, and all that is our divine architecture.
Mhm.
It's who we are.
Mm.
Sorry, can I
Well,
go? Yeah,
yes,
go. Did you
absolutely.
have a question?
No, I had an
Go
observation.
ahead.
Well, I was thinking how it's kind of like it wouldn't be great if we were more aware of this sort of thermostat that we have around feeling.
Mhm.
It kind of made me feel about, in terms of what you're saying, it'd be like living in a home and seeing all the plants wilting. Like, why are the plants wilting? And it doesn't occur to us to look at the thermostat and regulate the temperature. We're like, oh my
Yeah,
goodness, what are we going to do about the plants? I don't know. That's what came to mind for me. It's kind of like, yeah, well, it makes so much sense. Just look for the feeling.
it's so innocent though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
like we just missed it. And there wasn't anybody, I don't know about in your life, there wasn't anybody around me to let me know how well I was made.
Mm.
Mhm.
I was constantly, not viciously, just constantly told how I could improve.
Mhm.
Stop doing this and do more of this. And
Mm.
if you would only, and did that, it was my parents trying to make me into a good person.
Mm.
They had no idea that that had already been taken care of.
Mhm.
Mm.
They had no idea. But it isn't that I didn't need some help in how to brush my teeth, and but if you've ever watched a little kid, a baby, and then a toddler and so forth, and you notice how much they teach themselves to do without anybody sending them to class, It's like they learn how to walk.
Mm.
They they'll crawl over in their little fat little hands and knees, and they'll pull themselves up on something, and they'll look around, and they'll take one step, and they tip over, and they see no problem with that. And then they'll try it again later if they feel like it, and maybe they take 2 steps and tip over. But unless somebody tells them tipping over is really bad, they don't see any problem, because that's how learning to walk works. You find out what balance is by feeling it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So they teach themselves how to walk all by themselves, how to pile up blocks, how to recognize names of things, how to pick up a spoon, and all by themselves. The learning curve of a human being from the time they're born until they're about 4 or 5 is like that. It's
Mm.
enormous. No classes. And I think lots of schools are getting a lot better, but the learning curve usually starts to flatten out when they go to school,
Mm-hmm.
because then they're taught that learning is about proving to someone that you can memorize something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You have to prove it to somebody, and then learning becomes about getting good grades, and you feel good if you get good grades. You feel inadequate if you don't, and
Mm.
none of that happens when you're learning to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
None of that happens when you're learning all the other stuff. You're a really good person now because you learned to walk, or you're a bad person because you tipped over. And it's like, it's so innocent though. It's so innocent. And it all comes from not knowing who we really are, not knowing that we already have everything that we need. I have a great granddaughter she's 11 now, but when she was 4, I think, maybe not quite 4. Yeah, not quite 4. Um, I have I have in my house a big wooden elephant carved out of one piece of wood. It's about, you can't see this, but it's about this big. I just love it. I found it on a sidewalk sale, and I thought, I need that. I'm a shrink. I have to have an elephant in the living room that nobody can talk about. Right?
That's perfect.
So I brought it home, and it's kind of a rocking elephant. So she loved it, but it weighs a ton. But I would pull it over into the middle of the room so she could sit on it. But one day she decided she wanted it to sit still. She didn't want it to move. And I was just watching her, and she just stood there looking at the elephant, and she went and got a book and put under the rocker. What?
Clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's like 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, she figured it out.
Amazing.
Yeah. Nobody told her about fulcrums and, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. She's just like, I get it. And I'm not saying that because she's the world's greatest great granddaughter, which of course she is. But
That's beside the point.
yeah, it's it's astonishing to just watch what's right under your nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's right under our nose is us. And we are really something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's has nothing to do with accomplishments or physical beauty or anything. We are just something. And we had nothing to do with it.
Mm.
I love that. I love that. Like whether I or anybody was beautiful, according to some sort of standard or not so much. I had nothing to do with it. They had nothing to do with it. It's just, this is the kind of human plant we are.
Mm-hmm.
And we are the perfect us.
Yeah. You mentioned being a shrink, and so I'd love to hear more about how what you're speaking about relates to that work. And
This is just it. This is what I do.
yeah,
I don't,
versus the
uh,
traditional approaches
yeah,
of,
I, uh,
diagnosing and
I don't do that. I, uh, I won't do that. It's people start to believe they are their diagnosis. And a diagnosis in my world is just a name for a habit of thinking that isn't very useful. So why would I want to call somebody by their bad habit? It in the old psychology, or what I shouldn't call it that. It's kind of judgmental. The way I used to work is to find out what's wrong with people and find the box up in my head to diagnose them, and partly I suppose it was to get insurance to pay for the work I was doing, um, but also so that they would understand why they feel so bad. This is why you feel bad, because you have this. And that was kind of, for people, that was kind of a relief at first. Oh, no wonder I'm having this kind of trouble, because I have this. But stopping there seemed kind of odd, because I didn't know how to help people be happy. And I didn't know that a diagnosis was simply a habit of thinking. I didn't know that. I thought it was way more serious than that. And I never in school learned how to do anything about that. And the reason is because nobody in school knew. Because they thought it was all about finding out what's wrong. So imagine my surprise when I first learned from Sid and others that there isn't anything wrong with us. It just, it's just our thinking. And when I heard that, I thought the top of my head was going to come off, actually. But I knew it was true. I knew it was true, but at the same time, I didn't want to accept it because it seemed too easy and too simple. And it made me look stupid, like I hadn't seen it before. And so I threw every argument I could at it. Yeah, but what about this and what about that? And what, like, say, what about when somebody close to you dies? That's not just your thinking. And then I would eventually say, well, does everybody, when someone close to them dies, feel exactly the same way for exactly the same degree, exactly the same amount of time? Nobody could say yes to that. Ergo, must be our thinking. Same with any other subject I come up that I thought was an exception. What about when you're a single mom and you have 3 kids and you don't have any money? That's not just your thinking. Well, does every single mom with 3 kids and no money feel exactly the same way? The same degree, same length of time? You can't. You can't say yes to that because it's just ridiculous. So the more I threw at it and the more I couldn't find any circumstances, the more I trusted my first instinct, which was, that's true. We're taking free will and we're misusing it, and we didn't know it. We didn't know it. It's so innocent. We did not know that our habitual misery or discomfort or angst was our thinking, and it was optional. That's a big thing not to know.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But what an amazing, liberating experience to find out that that was never true. That
Mhm.
we're we're making our own movie all the time.
Hmm.
I do want to, I do, for people who are going to watch this, I do, um, I don't ever want to come across as somebody that never gets pissed off,
Mhm.
that never gets uh, sad, never gets anything everybody else gets. I do. The difference is that I know it's temporary, I know it's my thinking, and I know I should probably not make any big decisions when I'm feeling that way.
Hmm.
Even though the decision I want to make, I just know it's true. I know I should watch this guy right in the mouth. But it's like, and it's selfish to remember not to do that because I don't want to clean up the messes I make.
Hmm.
I'm not at that moment doing it for humanity. It's selfish. I do not want to try to mop up some messes I would make by decisions I made when I was not who I am.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of essential selfishness. It's like, in all things, put your state of mind first.
Hmm.
Then you may occasionally have to clean up a mess, but not very often.
There become less messes to clean up along the way. We've
Definitely.
definitely noticed that. Fortunately.
Yeah, you may just need one paper towel until it's got a higher roll.
Today was half a sheet day.
It's a measure of my spiritual growth is how big my paper towel is.
Yeah,
Do you need the super absorbent one
That's right.
today?
maybe a mop and a vacuum cleaner,
That's right. We
roller,
still
and
have those days occasionally.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually with a young adult in the mix.
But I have noticed how I am being a little selfish now in that sense because I do realize, well, I'm going to have to do some serious mopping up. I never used that way to articulate it, but I think that's what's going on for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, yeah, you know what, my state of mind has gone south. Really, if I engage at this point, there's going to be a lot of mopping up to do.
yeah, yeah, and that's what your feeling is telling you.
Yeah,
Isn't that fortunate?
yeah, it
Yeah.
really is.
Just
Yeah.
what a I think I've said this before, maybe to you guys, that we get so enamored of all the electronics and all the things they can do, like our iPhones, and oh my God, they're smarter than we are. Um, but compared to how a human being is made, an iPhone is just a piece of nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True.
yeah.
It's just, it's like right now, just by the three of us, just by intention, we can change the focus of our lenses in our eyes
Mm,
with intention.
mm.
Mm-hmm.
What?
I know.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Who made that up? It's just it's just one little thing we can do, and we're doing it all the time, and we don't even realize what an amazing built-in app that is.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the incredible intelligence that is infinite. Like it's just when we look and feel the truth of that, we feel that's us.
yeah.
It's not that we have to understand it or know where it comes from. Like that
No,
is us in this moment.
no.
I think one of the places where people can get a little caught up, maybe in our group, maybe in general, is that, um, you know, when we're talking about the profound intelligence that is us, this loving um, quality that we're able to express and communicate into the world, they will then kind of look at, well, if we're focusing in that direction, what about all of these injustices that are happening in the world? And isn't that selfish to look in this direction? Um, and isn't there going to be some kind of bypassing happening if we're feeling well-being and peace of mind, but what about all of this? And from my perspective, my own personal experience with this has been that when I look to that deeper place inside of myself and feel that love, I want to take action from that place. I don't want to take action from
Mhm.
reactivity and upset. And that doesn't mean that I don't have that at times and feel that, but that there's a deeper calling that I also feel that has me step forward in some ways and not in others because I'm not called to. But I'd love for, because it's very, I guess, with what's going on, especially here in the US right now, it's very topical. And so I'd just love to hear your thoughts around that.
Um, that's a that's a great thing to bring up because I know that it can sound like, oh, you just take out your fairy wings and you float around and everything will be yeah. But um, for me, it's like I have a lot of faith in ripple effects,
Hmm.
and when we do what I call essential selfishness, when we just let go of everything that doesn't feel like love, and I do not mean personal affection.
Hmm.
I mean that deeper gratitude and appreciation for just being. When we just let go of everything that doesn't feel like that, every interaction we have with both ourselves and anybody else is elevated. Okay? It doesn't mean necessarily that the other persons all of a sudden become the same little floaty around. It just means that half of that interaction has just moved way up.
Mm,
That's powerful. It doesn't look like it's powerful because it doesn't make any noise. It
mm,
Hmm.
doesn't end up in the evening news,
Hmm.
but it is powerful. I was on a part of a whole bunch of just kind of the cutest, dearest young people learning this. I shouldn't call them cute, but I can call everybody cute because I'm 80. It's like we did a conference with people that know and are learning what we're talking about here, and uh, I had a little part in it, and I told a story about what happened to me a few years ago. I had an office. My office was on the edge of downtown Minneapolis, and there's this beautiful park across the street. I just love this park. Um, and when I had time, I used to go out and walk in the park and see what's happening. They had a volunteer gardeners that were always taking care of all the plants and so forth. And I used to go and see how they were doing. And it was a beautiful day. I walked into the park, and there was a woman with a stroller, and there was a baby in the stroller, and then there was a little, probably 3-year-old little girl hopping in front of her, and she had her little hands clutching a bunch of flowers, which she probably shouldn't have picked. But
mm,
and off to the side, there was this probably homeless guy sitting on this bench, and he was just, oh, he just looked like he's just worn out. He just was wearing everything he had. And he had a bunch of bags sitting by him, and um, I thought about going over and hanging out with him a little bit. But just then, this little girl saw him, and she stopped in her tracks. And she probably stood there for maybe 15, 20 seconds looking at him. And then she walked over to him and she handed him the flowers. Just held the flowers out. And he looked up and he had tears running down his. And he took the flowers, and then she just stood there again. And she reached over and she patted his knee. And then she ran back to her mom. The whole thing was maybe about a minute, right? We are that little girl. That's who we actually are.
Mm-hmm.
You think that didn't matter? That simple little 1 minute thing? That matters.
Mm-hmm.
When we are who we really are, it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Big time.
Yeah.
One of my heroes is Archbishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. And this is an aside. I got to meet him once. His daughter invited a few of us to come over and do some work, and her parents invited us to dinner. I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I just could not believe I was actually going to see my hero. I was really nervous because I thought, what if he's a jerk? and I'm going to be so disappointed. Or what if I just get speechless and I was a wreck. And that day in Cape Town, it had been raining a bit, and I had sandals, but I had socks on, and they got wet. So before I went in there, I took them off. And who opens the door but the Archbishop? I could not believe that my hero opens his own door. I just didn't know what to do. And he looks at my feet and he said, "Aren't your feet cold?" That is not what your hero says to you. And I said, no, they're fine. He said, "Would you like to borrow some of my socks?" And I said, "Oh, no, that's okay." I wish I would have. I would have framed them on the wall. Anyway, he turned out to be every bit as awesome as I thought he was, except he was ordinary. He was just an ordinary person that was just being himself. And one of his quotes, I put it on a Christmas card one year, but can I read it to you? Because it says everything that I know. Absolutely. And I hope it answers your question. There is no situation that is not transformable. There is no person who is hopeless. There is no set of circumstances that cannot be turned about by ordinary human beings and their natural capacity for love of the deepest sort.
Yeah.
Yes?
That is the greatest power.
Mm-hmm. And he lived that.
Yeah.
During apartheid, he would stand at the cathedral, and he's about this big. And he would stand at the cathedral doors when the police came to try to get the people who had came to the cathedral for sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And he would stand there and say, "No, you can't come in here. This is the house of God." He wouldn't yell. He would just, no. And they were angry, and but they wouldn't go past him. What do you make of that?
That's powerful.
Yeah. And he established the truth and reconciliation thing afterwards, where people who had been just children ripped out of their arms and husbands and wives tortured, and the people that had done that came, and the people that had it done came. The people that had done it confessed and asked for forgiveness, and the people that had it done forgave.
Mm.
If you've ever watched films of it, it'll just rip your heart wide open
Mhm.
for the god awfulness that happened and
Mm.
the courage and the capacity for forgiveness, all in one group of people.
Mm.
We should not forget what we're capable of.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's built into us,
Yeah.
and it starts with knowing we're just like that little girl.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful reminder that is, I think the remembering of what you're saying is so important because it is that the individual ripples of each one of us remembering
That's right.
who we are and being ordinary and whatever that means to us, whether it's giving a flower, sharing some
Mm-hmm.
socks, helping feed someone, like that is just our natural state when we're in that place.
Nobody ever looks at a baby and says, "It's ordinary baby." Ordinary is just, why would you want to be anything other than that?
Mm.
Why wouldn't you want to be the ordinary, perfect part of perfect creation? Why wouldn't that be enough?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, someone, we're having a Facebook Live later on today, and someone asked a question about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I think, if I'm remembering it correctly, there's this little tip at the top about, the spiritual or the transpersonal or awakening. And for me, it's like that's the complete opposite of where to start. That it is that true nature is the foundation of it
Yeah,
all,
that's right.
and everything comes from there, even the practical.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Like a little 3-year-old making a fulcrum.
Yeah.
It's just, we just really want to know that we are our own kind of genius,
Mm.
and we have nothing to do with it. But we can know that that's what we are. Just imagine, we have, oh, I just love this one. We have the ability to have a thought that didn't come from our brain.
Mm.
Isn't that wild?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, where did it come from? Right? It's like, without that ability, there would be nothing ever new,
Mm.
nothing ever invented. But we're made that way. We can just be walking around one day and have a thought that comes to us that just, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
we'd never had it before. That's ordinary.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to us all the time. We
Mm-hmm.
just didn't realize it. It's like being able to, with intent, refocus your lens.
Yeah.
Ordinary.
It's beautiful. I
Mm.
mean, it's just,
Mhm.
it's, it's so hopeful and so empowering to recognize who we are and what the simplicity of what that means in terms
Mhm.
of navigating life
Yeah,
versus the complexity that our mind comes up with in terms of
yeah.
obstacles and hurdles.
We can complicate a rock. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dubious skill, but we can.
Yeah, we can.
Uh,
Is there anything else you want to ask, Angus? We're
No,
getting to the top of the hour.
no, I really, really, my greatest wish that you would do this again repeatedly because I could just listen to you all day. It's just
you
so
know, I,
wonderful,
I want
really.
to I want to tell you where I'm at, and because I'm 80. I keep telling people that just so I'm kind of proud of it. But I do want you to know it doesn't take long to get to be 80. And so if you think you've got like 100 years left and it's just a long, no, it isn't. Doesn't take long.
Mm.
So um, I have a certain amount of kind of, it's kind of probably positive urgency
Mhm.
to tell as many people as I can who they actually are,
Mm.
because I don't have a lot of time left to do that.
Mhm.
Plus, I can figure out how to do it after I go on to wherever I'm going
Yeah,
next.
who knows what your next level
Yeah,
is going to be?
I can figure out how to do that. But until that,
Yeah.
um, I'll help you in any way I can.
Oh,
Oh, that's so lovely.
thank you.
Thank you.
You
Yeah.
betcha. You're doing good work. I love the name of your organization.
Oh,
That is
Yeah.
so cool.
thank
And
you.
we'll send you the little. There's a mini documentary on the wolves of Yellowstone where we took our inspiration. We'll
Oh, I
send that
would
to
love
you.
to see
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, we'll
yeah,
share that with you. And
Awesome.
yeah, it's fun to see. And I just again I want to thank you, Mavis. Just the the feeling, the depth, the love just comes through so beautifully, and you point to it so well. And especially that reminder about Desmond, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, that really touched my heart. So thank you
He's
for that reminder.
awesome.
yeah. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Yeah.
Carry on.
And you too.
And we'll
Thank
hopefully
you.
speak
I
soon.
will.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're looking forward to staying connected, and we send you lots of love. Thank you.
Thank you so
yeah.
much.
All
Lots of
right.
love. Thanks,
Take
Mavis.
care.
Take care.
Bye
Welcome.
bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.